curious. There. She followed him and soon found herself falling a very deep hole into a strange place called Curious.
Conversation.
Curious.
Conversation.
Nowadays, there are still girls and boys whose curiosity leads them to strange places.
And I just want to just shoot right in with just my favorite question and then just see where it flows from there. This is my idea. Is just whoever I'm getting on these groups, what do I most want to know? And then wherever it goes from there, I don't really have any questions. So being an observer of both your work, having worked with B and a lot of my friends worked with you, Alira, I want to know how you create ritual in your photography. And why do you believe it levels up people's brands, businesses, and just beings altogether? And let's just do popcorn style. Whoever wants to answer this first, and then we'll just carry from here.
B, do you want to go first?
I was like, not everyone at the same time. Just hold your horses. I backtrack a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
From my personal perspective, it's I actually didn't realize I was already doing elements of ritual in my photography until someone kind of pointed it out to me.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of years ago, that to me ritual is basically starts with bringing conscious intention to anything that you do, and that it can actually be quite simple, but it can be deep. So my kind of unconsciously starting to set intention with my clients led to what I started to see as transformation during the photo shoot. And it was more the personal kind of emotional transformation. And then that started to grow. And so my elements are more anchoring people into what they want and what they want to embody and what they want to express. And then kind of going from there, and then depending on what they need, and whether it's more business branding or their personal transformation, and they bringing themselves into that ritual, then it kind of varies. But it starts with setting an intention and creating something to the future.
Yes. Fuck yes.
Yeah, I think it's really beautiful that both Bea and we have, this kind of concept of ritual within the way that we work. And I mean, both of us, I think I'm amazing, and I think Bea's work is fucking incredible. So it's beautiful that people have the option to, work with different artists that are kind of moving within that realm of the work, rather than it just being oh, give me your money and I'll take some photos and that'll be it. Because I think, that for me feels like a really missed opportunity for deep connection with somebody. And also, speaking from my personal experience, I just freaking love understanding the vulnerabilities of every different type of person that I get to work with. And I guess through that, I get a transmission of continuing to go down the rabbit hole of letting go of my own vulnerabilities and stuff. Because I'm oh, everybody is like me, we all have our own things happening. But yeah, so, because I just, for a lot of my young years, I really felt quite separate from humanity in general, whatever that happened to be, whether it's karmic or a self-imposed thing. But yeah, I feel that it's been a beautiful transformation for me to get closer and closer to people, and by proxy, using ritual and working with intention, as Bea said, it's it's allowing a space as well for me to be present for everybody else who I work with. And I just think it's a perfect experience for deep connection that you might not get elsewhere.
Yeah, incredible. And just the intention piece is just so important to me. When I see the work of both of you and having been a product of Bees, seeing it go up on Instagram, Facebook, websites, courses, blah, is to me, when I see these things, and I assume a lot of people as well, when they see these new photos, there is a an impact from what you're seeing. And I just want to ask B, for you first, is how do you feel that happens? What is it that creates it?
Yeah. That's a great question, because that's kind of something that I've discovered over time, like through doing, like, talking a couple of years ago, realizing that intention really brings something magical to the space, and then building on that and building with symbolism and the space that we're around, like where are we surrounding ourselves with, and consciously choosing different pieces. But to me, the biggest part of what I do and why I do what I do is, what I say is, like, when people consciously step into that space, it's like they're in spiritual realm, you would say, like, their higher self, like the part of them that wants them to grow, steps in. And through that embodiment, the codes start to like express, and then you as a person being photographed actually receive your own medicine. So what activates you is your own expression that you weren't able to maybe see and feel fully before. And then you look at yourself, and it's like you're transfiguring yourself. Your energy is transfiguring your smaller self energy, whatever you want to put a language around. So like that person that you are here, here's where you want to go in transformational space. It's like, this is all the shit that's going to have to come up. When it comes to photography, I feel like you bridge that gap faster because you embody this in the moment. And whether it's through play or archetypal work, it's like kind of consciously choosing to work with a certain archetype and linking it to psychology and Jungian understanding of what happens when we delve into that. That is transformative in itself. But then you've got this added bonus of actually seeing yourself. You get to see, you get to be seen, which is transformational in itself. But then you get to see yourself, and your energy actually does that. That's what I see in a lot of my clients. Like, they get transformed by their own expression and their own intention and their own, like, I'm leveling up. I need to become more of this kind of person, or express more of this part of myself. And then you integrate. And then when you post, and I know this because you told me, and many of my clients have said as well, it's like when they post, they get reinitiated again. It's like, oh my God, I need to upgrade the language I use, or I need to really like energetically back myself up here, because the energy of the photo, of your expression, like, it's not lying. It almost like demands a certain level of commitment. And some people go through a really long process with that, integrating. Like the resistance to, say, choose the photos, or then the resistance to post. I'm like, hey, it's been a few weeks since I sent you the thing. Like, are you okay? And then I get all these amazing insights from people going like, yeah, I'm like really in it now. Like I'm reconciling parts of myself, where I'm like learning from my own expression. And it's like, I can't believe this is actually me. So there's quite a lot of elements there for sure.
Yeah, like for myself, only being able to speak for myself, I've done like maybe 4 archetypes of you, all up. And like it's like a feedback loop constantly with like, like I see the photo and I'm like, yeah, I have to create something that goes with this sometimes, or I have something that I'm like, oh, this will fit perfectly. But it's that certain level up. I'm like, oh, like there's so much potential with this. How do I put it out into the world to fully, it's like a product that is like, it's a higher version of me, and how do I step into it? Then on the other side is like, when I put it out into the world, it's so curious to see how people respond to me differently, and even in just the different flavors of what we've created. Because of even you and I, for some of them, we had like a pretty potent ritual ourselves, which we can talk about later. I'm so curious to know like how that happens. And I guess for you, Alira, like, what are the contrasts of difference that you believe when it comes to creating these rituals and that big impact, how it levels people up? But I want to also know, like, I know certain people within our community, and just like people that I look at, they're like 6-figure, 7-figure, 8-figure entrepreneurs who have just the most boring photos ever, like just the same shit every time. Like, what do you believe the contrast is there to be able to level up past them, and what makes it individual by making these ritualized photos and brandings and the ways that you show up in your aesthetic? how are people, what is the wave that's coming up through doing that, essentially, is what I'm asking. How are the 6, 7, 8 figure entrepreneurs going to come up now with this branding?
Oh, well, that's a really complicated question,
Yeah.
to be honest with you, because I mean, it comes down to personal choice, isn't it? You can choose to have a beautiful ritualistic photo shoot with somebody, and it'll allow you to have like this next transmission piece, visually speaking, on your branding, or, you know, you can pay someone else who doesn't want to really do that. I'm not quite sure how to answer the question actually that you shared with me.
Yeah. Maybe I can ask it a bit better. So
can I just say a little thing and then maybe do that? Like I heard the thing around it's people's makeup as well. It's like values, what is kind of like available, but like think about it in terms of how people learn and how people express. It's like some people really express and learn on an embodied level. And by that, I mean, like, it's more kinesthetic. So it's like their energy gets activated from being in something. And some people transmute or transmit more on like the conceptual level, or you have to be with them in person to get activated. So I feel like there'll be few things in that realm that would probably answer.
yeah,
But some people just kind of don't even have that activated in them. Like their boring energy is boring. What they're saying is really interesting. And like the way they deliver best is through writing or through books or, you know, like seminars and shit. It's like,
I guess
Joe Dispenza, and like Joe Dispenza doesn't activate me with his face, you know, like.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm asking is like for these people, obviously they have their 6, 7, 8 figure businesses, they've got to have a potent transmission somewhere, you know, whether it's in their seminars, books, writing, blah. But now that there's this piece available, you know, that like, I believe you two are creating a really great wave of it within our community. And I just don't see it a lot, you know, but how do you feel like this is going to transform the industry in this way, you know, by creating ritual art and branding and press photos? What do you believe is going to be different if more people start moving into this way of expressing themselves online?
Well, I personally feel like that, I mean, it's a great opportunity for people to do that. Not saying that everybody will take that route, because, yeah, as Bea said, there's different ways that people want to express themselves. But I guess where the opportunity lies there is, I guess, allowing collaboration with a visual artist and allowing them to bring the potent energy of what they have to give within the realm, the physical realm, and through communication with this 6, 7 figure person who is doing their own artistic creation through writing, through seminars, whatever. It's like, yeah, that collaboration can actually create connection and community. And I guess it's bringing it back to tribe as well, where every single person has a piece to bring, which creates the collective juicy experience. So I guess it's just more opening up an opportunity to work with the medicine that a visual artist can bring to that.
Totally.
I think it also gives an opportunity for audience that resonates with that type of language to have a door open. So, you know, for people who would struggle to conceptualize certain things, they're getting drawn in by the art, or they're getting magnetized by the unspoken things that the symbolism and the art and the, you know, whether it's photography or installation or whatever it is, art has that power to, I resonate with that tribe and that community. Like, I'd always had that power to kind of like talk to people on a level that you don't have to understand to feel, and that it actually triggers you into contemplation or triggers you into like, oh, I'm curious now, like I'm listening. Whereas before I'm kind of like, meh, you know, a bit boring, have to go through certain hoops, jump through certain hoops to become the qualified audience, like qualified enough. Whereas I feel like photography, especially that intentional kind of charged up energetically, photography does that thing. It's like a whoo, you can just feel the impact, but you don't even know necessarily what's happening. Like people say to me, that they would respond to a photo before they read what's underneath it, you know, like, because they can feel something. And I believe we are waking up more and more to that part of ourselves, especially in our community, to the intuitive, kind of emotive, instinctual response. And then we're like, okay, what's here? You know, there's something here. There's like a pull. Now I want to listen.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, what is so fucking cool about photographers for me, especially you two, is like, in this era of social media, it is the photo or the video that people see first. You know, it's the visual connection. I believe visuals is what captures people first. It's not the words. It's not what someone's actually saying in the video. It's what you see. And I guess that's why I find it so important. Like you're saying, like Joe Dispenza, if I was scrolling down the feed and I didn't know who he was, you know, I'd maybe not click straight into him because of his branding isn't particularly, you know, on point to knowing what the transmission of what he can give, because he's phenomenal at what he does. And I'm wondering, like, for both of you, how much, when you're taking photos and you're in the artistic eye of capturing a moment, and even when someone gives you a brief, are you thinking about marketing, if at all, like that, the brand marketing of someone?
It's the reason I moved away from photography, actually. Because marketing bores me. Like, thinking about it bores me. Like, I don't understand it. I'm not interested. I mean, I was, because I did branding photography for a couple of years, and I would like inquire into people's, like, you know, mission and their business and their intention. And that's definitely a lot of photographers who do that. But the reason I started to move away from that is, like, I'm interested in the transformation that can happen in a moment. I'm interested in that felt experience and how that fits into the brand. It's not necessarily the lane that I want to stand in. So I stopped doing that because I want to stay connected to the magic that I really enjoy and the magic that I see. So it's like, you know, leveling people up into their business, and then you can figure out how that fits into your brand, or your marketing person can figure out how that fits into your brand. That's kind of where I want to stay in, because that other stuff is kind of like, yeah, a bit dry for me.
Yep. Yourself, Alira?
Yeah, so honestly, when I'm working with somebody, I'm not thinking about the marketing per se, but I feel when I work with people, there's obviously, we go through clarity questions, and we're trying to understand like who they really are in their essence, not what they're trying to sell, because essentially they're trying to sell themselves, right? Most of the people that I work with, it's not generally speaking product photography and that kind of thing. It's about the person. So, you know, I'm always of the idea that I'm not trying to make you something that you're not. I want to like draw out the beautiful juiciness that you have as a being and elevate that. So then people can be drawn in by that, not for you to put on some facade of what you're not. Because I believe that, you know, we have all of these archetype facets within ourselves anyway. We can choose to be whatever we want, right? So when I'm working with somebody, I'm like, where are you at right now? What do you want to actually explore within your own realm? And by proxy, that's actually going to be the most authentic transmission you can give to reach your people. Because the people, for example, that I am reaching in my own business right now are not necessarily the people I was reaching 4 years ago. So as I'm transforming, it would be expected that the people that I'm working with are also constantly transforming. And this is why, you know, if you're doing branding, think about it in a way of just a constant self unfolding and exploration. And I recommend for people, if they're wanting to do branding stuff, that they are open to doing more than one photo shoot a year, because who you are in January is not who you're going to be in September. And that's the beauty. That's the beauty of it. It's almost like photography is such a beautiful reflection of inner growth. And it just has that added aspect of aesthetic on top of it. I mean, we're all humans wearing like these little garments, right? Underneath it all, I fully get it that we're just these naked little skeletons that have their own thing going on. But yeah, why not play with the realm of aesthetics and and bring that aspect into what's happening within the internal world. So yeah, I hope that answered the question.
It
Yeah,
does,
it
and I
does.
resonates so much because a lot of people that speak to me and the reason they want to come back, or like the reason they go to another photographer, is that they start to realize that almost the energy of that expires. There's like, especially if they're in transformational work and they grow and they shed identity and they leap and they like try different facets of themselves, it's like their congruency is lost. It's like it feels stale. Like it feels a little stale after a while. Some are not. Some are really potent. Like I feel like if it taps more into like the core of who you are, that it's a little less wavering, then it will still be true. Like, you know, a good classic portrait, that might not really expire. But if you're playing with identities or elements, you know, you're embodying your version of your fiery expression, like that's going to probably shift a little bit, or you're going to have a season of that. You know, like I look at astrology as well. It's like, oh, it's interesting that now I have a lot of clients who come and want to embody this thing. And we're in, say, I don't know, Leo season. Right? It's like I look at a Leo's work and I'm like, there's so much like proud Leo expression and that sensuality, and not surprisingly so, because that's the part of the natural essence and expression that probably wants to be amplified in people. So working with that sense, it's like I agree with everything that you said. It's like, let's just play, let's just see what wants to come out. That's why I like to make as much room in my space as possible, and like work more with what wants to be expressed in the moment, rather than the understanding of what the brand wants, or what, you know, how your marketing colors fit with that. That is like almost secondary, or like a third thing for me. Like, how does that fit in with what you're trying to express? Or like, how can you then mold your, you know, like that you can mold your Instagram expression, and, you know, you can totally like play with different flavors of yourself. Like there's no rules. You're the one making the rules. You don't have to fit in some old rules anymore.
Well, mate, you two have just like touched on like 7 different things that I want to talk about in just like both of your speeches. This is just very exciting for me. So which one? I think like, because of this, like I'm creating this one because I just love to have these conversations, and I will be learning more for myself. But also like for people within the community, and hopefully for extended community, drawing people in that are artists, entrepreneurs, and people going through spiritual transformation. And like, I believe photography captures all of that. And this is exactly what you two are saying right now. And I like that duality that I'm hearing there is like, it can both unlock your artist. Say if you're like an entrepreneur, someone that maybe doesn't consider yourself an artist, once you see these things, you're like, fuck, like I'm an artist, you know, because you help create, you like birth that out, as well as you're giving the transmission through your work. And then on the other side, an artist that gets a photo, they like, it helps them like market themselves out and be seen more by their followers and create more people coming in. So it brings a bit of an entrepreneurial wave to them, being like, oh, I can leverage out further now that I've got really beautiful branding, rather than something maybe they took on their selfie or whatever, that it's really expanding them. I love that duality. And I believe with both of you, you're more so than working with businesses, like you're working with brands, and the brand is the person. And I'd like to just talk a bit about someone being the brand, especially in this era of Instagram, social media. How does one, like, I guess, become to understand themselves as a brand through Instagram and social media and photography, and themselves speaking?
That is like moment. A curriculum, bro. That is like, you could probably run like a 3-month course on this. I'm like feeling a lyric going like, okay.
Yeah, but what is the part that you play in it? Like, what's the part that the photographer plays in capturing a brand as the person?
I'd say it's like an investigation a little bit, like not buying into what they think they want,
Yeah.
like not buying into what they think they want, and kind of actually intuitively tuning in and through right questions. And also, like, if you're, as a photographer, are in your authority and you know where your lane is and you know your strengths, it's kind of like, you know, if I was to work with Alira, I would not want to impose anything on her art. Like, if I'm going to invest in someone's and I recognize their authority and their value, it's like, cool, tell me what you think. Like, if that's the kind of artist I want to work with. Some people will do cookie cutter for you, and that's also useful in some areas. But I would recognize the value in that, and then I can learn from someone. It's kind of like going, I don't know, having an intuitive reading or having your chart read or whatever. It's kind of like, okay, what do you feel? What do you see? Like, what comes through? It's like the visionary artist that download something in our community would say download or channel or whatever, but it's even just, let's say, interior designer. You would ask them what they think, right? I think if you really understand the value of their art and craft, you would ask them, hey, what's your vision? Like, what do you see here? It doesn't directly answer your question, but I think that's the value that I see and I recognize.
I think both of you do have questionnaires or a clarity session beforehand to be able to capture that. So it's not you're just like, oh, I think you should blah. It's like, oh, I've actually had a look at what you're doing, who you are, ask you some questions, and then gone, yeah, maybe we should do this.
Yeah.
You know?
That's also what you pay for, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, it's the process that actually brings out the value. And it's a lot. Yeah. Please.
Yeah. I find it interesting. I feel sometimes perhaps people think that they're only paying for the photos, but there's such a huge process that goes into it. And I guess kind of bringing it back around again to what we were talking about in terms of like, yeah, just the process. No, I'm just going to keep directional, actually. It's like the person is being initiated, what we were talking about before, is being initiated even before they actually go through the process with us. So it's they've got to have some sort of preparation beforehand to step into that space of, I guess, transformation. And I'm kind of getting sidetracked because there's so many things that I actually want to say.
We've got time.
Permission to be sidetracked. Just
say all the things. This is
say what you want to say.
We're just everywhere.
I feel like what the most important thing that I wanted to say in terms of your original question is kind of looking at it from the other perspective, where does the photographer want to whore themselves out or not? Like, if the photographer is whoring themselves out just for the money, then maybe the magic actually won't be there and the transmission won't be there. So yeah, I mean, the whole process of someone stepping into a brand is like, I guess the photographer also needs to be specific on what their brand is and who they are, because if they can't hold that presence point for somebody to have their information or whatever, and they're just kind of taking photos or whatever, you know, for some look that might not be authentic, it's essentially whoring yourself out just to make a buck. And I'm not interested in that. And that's something that I feel very passionate about within my own realm. Is, for me, why would I be a photographer if I didn't get to play and I didn't get to be truly connected to what feels good for me? I don't care. You can keep your money. It's you know, for me, because I know that if I'm in full integrity of what my my truth is, then the people who I work with are going to be just as in integrity of what they're bringing as well. I've had people contact me who are like, oh, I just want a couple of shots of this or whatever. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but it doesn't work that way. Like, I'll send you these photographers as a possibility. Have fun and the best. I would rather be in an integrity of what.
Yeah. So important. It's such an important piece, because it's like what I'm hearing you say, it's like you're honoring your artist and your creative process and how you stay in your lane and in your value. I'm kind of like hearing, let's say, a metaphor from like the different part of the world. It's like, if you're a heart surgeon, you're going to work on hearts, and that's where your fucking genius is. If someone comes, it's like, hey, you cut people, can you like fix up my shoulder? It's like, no, I work with hearts, and you pay me because I'm an expert at this. And and I will get you results
Mm-hmm.
if hearts is what you want, you know.
Mhm.
And then there's not a problem if you want to go to an ortho specialist. Like I'm okay with that. That's what they do over there.
Mhm.
But somehow with photography, the lines get blurred a little bit for people. It's like, oh, you're just a person with a camera. No, you're not a person with a camera. You are the artist that uses the medium. And this is what started to happen for me last year. It's like I started to realize that, you know, I don't want to just do branding, because I don't want to just do the cookie cutter kind of like repeat some process that I actually am not passionate about. I want to work with that emerging process. Like I want to work with the transformation emergence, and it happens to use the camera, you know. I don't know, maybe if I was a painter, I would do it in a painting style, but I'm not. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a very clear line for us, I think, on the other side. But somehow on the other side of that, people are like, well, I just want 10 photos. I'm like, cool. Yeah, that's not how I work. These are the rules.
Yeah, I get it. You know, like, I guess just even within our community, using as an example, like you're saying, painting is like someone that we know, Steph Freeman. I don't think she'd be down if you just took a selfie of yourself just to paint that. She wants to create like a ritual and paint it of you, you know, like, and that's just what you two are doing. You don't want to take another photo and just create that, you know? And I guess
I do want to circle back to something. Can I circle back to something real quick?
Yeah.
Because I was feeling this thread of like bringing it back to like the brand and what works, and like why certain photos have an impact. Like I was questioning this a few years ago when I started doing photography the way I do it now. Because I was like, why is it that when somebody posts a selfie, that from the technical kind of like aesthetics perspective, it's kind of like, wow, you know, see some shit in the background. From like photographer's perspective, it's like, you could do better. But it has a response, like people resonate with it. And I started to question it and then tested it in practice. It's like when people can feel the person, they will see the feeling and respond to the feeling more than they do with the aesthetics. So that's like the thing that I started to anchor in more. But what you can do is you can clean up the aesthetics so you can bring out that emotion more. So the value in what we do is that we work with everything else that people might not focus on so much, but we make it a cohesive experience so that the eye and then the emotional body and the subconscious receives it on a deeper level. It's like you are actually moved more because you're not distracted. And there's so much when you study photography, you know, you study the composition and you study how the eye travels. It becomes a natural thing for people who are artists. You don't think about it anymore. You just know when the composition is right or how you want to play with it. But most people don't have that. It's kind of like the, I don't know, I'm missing the word. There's like awareness of that, you know, there's an embodied awareness of that. And then there's an actual conceptual awareness of that. But the essence of it is the feeling. So to me, if someone comes, and I've had a lot of clients come and say like, hey, I've had these photo shoots and I hate the photos. And they would show me the photos and I'm like, it's a good picture. Like the photographer did a really good job. And I would question, you know, why they don't resonate with it. But I think it's because there was no room in the feeling. They didn't get the transformation. They didn't really feel themselves and their authenticity in that. And that's what they can feel. They look back at those photos and I'm like, even if it's not conscious, all I can remember is that I was uncomfortable, that I didn't like it, and I can pick that up from the photo. And I'm like, cool. So as a photographer now, I can value that more. And even a simple portrait, if that person is really present and if they have their intention and they like fully bring themselves to it and they have like mini reflection awakening, they will resonate with that photo, which means they will be more congruent with it, which means then when they share a message, they're actually not like holding their energy back, they're coming into it. And that's what hits people. And that answers closer to the question. That's from my experience, at least.
Yeah. Wow. Fuck yes. How are you both getting people to drop into that, like stopping that awkwardness of being uncomfortable? How are you two getting people embodied?
Well, I feel for me anyway, when I'm working with people, it's more about, I mean, you've got to have some kind of a setup beforehand. You can't just go straight into it like, all right, I'm all right, let's go. The setup happens when you have the initial conversation about, hey, what are you looking for? Like, tell me about where you're at the moment and I'm sure Bea does the exact same thing with the people who she works with.
Mm.
It's creating a connection point together. So we're just two humans coming together. It's not like I'm this elite kind of whatever and you're coming in. It's like, no, we're on the same playing field. Let's find like where we can dance together. And then on the actual shoot day, it's like, yeah, just spending some time to allow this person to breathe, to stop for a moment if they start getting a little bit like stiff and don't know what to do with themselves. And also drawing upon the skills as a photographer to help with posing, or making sure that the angle and the place that we're shooting within feels good and is an opening space for the person to navigate whatever they need to navigate. And yeah, I've had so many experiences where when I work with people, they'll have come with an idea and then it just completely transforms and we just go in. It's like a trip, really. You're like just kind of dancing and it's very psychedelic and things unfold, and sometimes someone will cry or they'll just have this moment where I'll get a transmission as well. My body will just tingle and I'll just be like, yes, and get really into this interaction that I'm having with them. And those are the things that I absolutely live for, because it's a taste of pure life force just doing exactly what it needs to do in that moment. I'm in my magic, this person's in their magic, and we're able to make this beautiful poetry that cannot be fucking repeated. Excuse my French. But
no,
yeah.
I love that. I love that. It's so passionate.
Yes,
and I love that moment that you describe. I know it so well. It's like there's like a lead up on the day, even like on the day there's like a lead up, and then I look through the lens and I feel it and I'm like, they dropped in. It's like it's like that they're now fully in their body, and it's like the relaxation happens and everything flows more. And it's like at the start, it's like you use all the different tools, movement, music, sound, breath, like conversation, whatever works for different person. But yeah, there's definitely that moment where like the veil kind of drops and you're then in like a portal, and then they have no idea what's happening and they just express themselves in a completely different way, and they're like, wow, is this me? Like what? And you show them a little bit like during the photo shoot, and they're just like, that opens them even more, and they're like, fuck, I can't believe this is me. Like I'm relaxing and I'm trusting the process. And then the creation expresses itself. Like, absolutely. I love the way you put it. It's absolutely what happens every time.
I love that both of you, as soon as we started talking about embodiment, both of your bodies started getting into it, like, yeah, we just do this and we do this. And I'm like, yes. And I want to keep on that thread because that feels what's most alive, is like, so people can, for maybe people that aren't used to this kind of process, is what are some of the most, like maybe one of each side is like, what is one of the most beautiful moments you've experienced and witnessed someone else as with discretion, if that's right. It doesn't have to be the most, but one of. And also for yourself, like what is one of the most beautiful moments has happened for yourself during one of these rituals, embodiment over 3 moments?
Oh my gosh.
So many.
I know. I'm like, how do I choose one?
Like what? Oh, okay. I've got one. I just roll with it because yeah, there's so many. But there was this particular one. This one photo shoot. This woman had her eyes closed the entire time. There's literally maybe a couple of moments that I've had her open her eyes, but the respect of that energy was actually so moving. Like I was moved by her internal process, and actually the photos turned out so fucking powerful and so magic. But that was the thing that happened. It's like she had an intention, she had something that she wanted to express, but it was actually about her expressing herself to herself so much. We were in like a public space too, you know, like it was in botanical gardens, wherever it was. And most of the magic happened in front of like one bush with camellia plants. And actually the camellia plant medicine was what she needed, because she ended up like really just pressing these flowers into her chest and having like an emotional process with it, and then like dancing with the energy of the plant. And then like I was just like, I didn't have to do anything. Or I was just like reminded her to breathe and that was okay, and was just like, I was awestruck. Like I had to like sit with that afterwards. I was like, wow, okay. And this was also like at the very beginning of me starting to work that way, and really acknowledging the beauty that I can't predict. There was no way that I was going to like predict that. That was very special.
Beautiful.
I can't honestly think of
Yeah.
like one. It's really hard. I mean, I've had such varied experiences. You know, I've bawled my eyes out while I'm photographing someone because I'm so deeply moved by what's happening in front of me. And, you know, other times perhaps the clarity might come in terms of dropping deeper into the layers of myself through the conversation that I have with this person afterwards, just hearing a reflection from them about, you know, where they went in that journey. And
is there maybe inspired by B's answer, is like, is there a particular moment, you know, near the start where you went, oh, like this is how I want to do it, you know, and I am doing it, like that goes, oh, embodiment photography, where this is a cathartic, ritualized experience with intention. Like, was there a moment of like it happened and then you wanted it, or you went for it and it clicked in?
I feel like I fell into it. It was not a conscious decision that I made. I guess I found that I was hearing the reflections over and over again, and I was like, oh, didn't know that was the thing that I was doing, but great. If that's working for people, then I'll use that in, I guess, my own branding to reach people. Because, you know, if I can, for me, what I've really noticed in my journey is I get to know deeper layers of myself through reflection through other. So the more that I actually receive feedback, I can go, oh, okay, cool. That feels true, or that doesn't feel true, or whatever. It's just kind of the way that I guess I've figured out how I personally grow. How do I answer this? I feel there was probably a moment in time with, I was shooting someone who's a very, very big name within the community. It's so weird calling it the community.
The community.
Right? What even, it's like a cult. But yeah, I was photographing this person, and she reflected to me afterwards about actually what she had been going through during our photo shoot, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing for you. And now we've kind of had this transparent conversation, and now I watched her years later just kind of blossom into these things that she didn't think she had herself. And that just seemed like such a natural thing that she does. And so that for me is just such a fulfilling experience to see that I was there at that point of transformation for this person, and then continuing to watch their journey unfold. Yeah, it's beautiful being able to actually have friendships with people that I've photographed as well. Like how wonderful for an introverted person like myself to like make friends with people just through like doing what I love the most, which is creating art.
Incredible. Yeah. I guess that's like something, again, like how you're saying before, like a photographer isn't someone that just turns up and takes a photo for you. I'm curious to know, like, if you feel ties, and if it's where the levels of like beneficial and detrimental of like having a client that goes off on their transformational progress, and you're like a pillar in it, you know, you capture the checkpoint, where you feel your ties, if you do at all, and if they can be beneficial or detrimental to you, where you get the benefits of what they're doing, you get the transmissions, or there's parts of you that's like too attached to what they're doing next and blah, because of you've helped create their
We're speaking about healthy boundaries here, I think, as a human.
yeah
So, but do not do codependent thing ever anyway. But I think I know what you're saying. It's kind of like really, again, to me, it's staying in your lane. And part of the reason I want to still work in that capacity with people who want to create and grow is like, I feel like a little activist in me is like, cool, if I can support them in that way, then their message gets further, then I feel like I've had a part in that, and that's fantastic. Yeah. So it inspires me to choose my clients based on values and, you know, is this a message that I would like to be a part of and amplify? Whether they choose to tag me in it or not, it's less about like the brand. It's more, yeah, like, is this the message that I want to, you know, put my energy into, essentially. I was literally having this conversation with one of my friends this morning. It's like, well, I think that's part of the conscious work. And if you're engaging the ritual and the intention, it's like, you as an artist, you can't avoid it. So I got upgraded over the years. It's like, well, that's no longer in alignment with me and what I want to do. I do the same. It's like, here's a bunch of people that, you know, I know that you probably find someone over there. And then also feeling really proud, and more like proud of like their growth, less like, oh, I helped you get there. More like, this is fantastic. You had this process. You gave this to yourself. You trusted that you're going to get something out of this. And now look at you. Yeah, it's like this thing of like, I'm so grateful that, you know, I was there. It's like what earlier I just said. It's like, I'm so grateful that I was there in that moment, because I was changed too. Like, I was moved by that transformation as well. And I have a lot of examples of that as well. And I don't feel attached to it or connected, but I hold them in my heart. It's like, wow, you know, there's so much potential in humans to be human and to transform when we're ready to like drop into the vulnerability that you earlier were speaking about. It's like, can you know, drop your expectations and just be a little bit more curious and courageous, and that potential is within. And you can use photography as a medium to help people unlock that. And that's why I continue doing what I do. And that's also why I decided to combine, you know, like clearing work and emotional clearing with photography, because you can kind of drop the resistance and reframe people's understanding of who they are quicker. And one of the examples that came to mind as well, I had a client, we just did a normal kind of portrait photo shoot. And then that was before I started combining clearing with photography work. And she chose the photos, and she didn't choose a single one that she was looking down the camera. Not a single one. And I know her a little bit, like at that time I kind of knew, and I just asked her, like, you know, I was like, hey, just noticing that this is what's happening. Do you want to talk about it? And this is what I mean. It's like, I'm in service of something bigger than just giving the person the photos and kind of like shutting the door and going, hey, I got the money, whatever. Yeah, it's like there's something niggling, and there's like an intuition here, because I'm in service more to the transformation and the growth. And she was open, and we ended up doing like a whole clearing session, which unlocked so many things for her. And the reflection that she was seeing in herself, she integrated that. She ended up choosing different photos. And, you know, like a couple months later, she launched a whole program where she was the face of. And I was like, great. You know, like if that helped move that last piece for someone to be okay with their own expression and really receive their own power, that's fucking amazing. That's another round of people then benefiting from the medicine of this person. It's like the best activism I can really think of from where I sit. So I'm feeling super grateful to be able to do that.
Yeah, well, like with that, like you said, like it's boundaries as well in there for yourself. But I'm curious to know how you create boundaries, or if you have to, on the other side, you know, like that if you're taking someone through a transformational process, and it's somewhat like you take on more than a role of a photographer, but a coach in some way, that it's like, what if I just keep like, hey B, you know, like, or Alira, like I'm having problems around blah, you know, that sort of has in the vein of what you did. Like how do you maybe, is there a way that you establish any kind of boundaries from the start that's like, I'm not your coach? Or is there ever any trouble around that?
From my experience, I've had a couple of people in my time where I've had to, I guess, kind of rein in the energy a little bit, because they start to go really deep into the story. I love having conversation with people and hearing where they're at. That's kind of my jam. And I also, you know, preface with the people that I work with that, you know, I'm not there to fix them. I'm there to be like a point of listening and for us to kind of come into a deeper space of reflection for where they're at. It's not about me in the moment, right? I'm there as the artist, as the vessel, but it's about them and their transformation journey. So in terms of boundaries, I feel like I've been actually pretty blessed to not ever really have to tell someone like, hey, can you like step the fuck back? I'm not good with this. But I feel, yeah, the only real experiences that I've had where I've had to assert my boundary quite strongly is post, where we've had the photo shoot and they're kind of wanting more and more and more. And I'm like, okay, actually, this doesn't feel in integrity for me anymore. I actually need to close this container, because I'm always willing and open to hear where people are at and perhaps meeting them where their needs are post as well. But there comes a certain point where like actually the container needs to be kind of closed for that, and whatever journey they need to go on for their own stuff that's coming up, then that's beautiful. And what they need to journey with, it's not my responsibility. So yeah, I think, and I'm speaking, that's a very rare experience that I've had, but it has happened. And, you know, that's my transparency about it. It happens in any industry, really, where people have to create boundaries for themselves. And we're all humans. Some of us are like magnets to get together. Sometimes we're not. And yeah, that just is what it is.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, I haven't had like experiences where it was like had to put a strong boundary. I think it comes with being really clear in what you're doing, like being really clear with your language at the start and kind of like preface, you know, preempt things, and be really clear about your process to a client. It's like, here's stage 1, here's stage 2, and here's stage 3. This is what kind of happens, you know, there'll be magic over here, and then you do that, and then happy holidays. But for me, it's a little bit different because I am a coach and I am a transformational coach. And I actually have quite a lot of clients who have had experience with photography with me before. And then they kind of come back later and like, hey, I think I want to work on this stuff now. And I do have avenues. So then it's just like, you know, here's a boundary for this piece. And here's a way of like re-entering an agreement that has new boundaries and new terms and conditions. And it's actually professional service on a different level. So for me, that question is actually more just about clarity of, you know, what service is what.
Yeah, I definitely want to just expand on what Bea just said. Yeah, totally. I mean, the experiences that I've had where I've had to put up the boundaries was actually when I wasn't clear about what I was actually bringing to the table in my own business as a photographer. So I definitely agree with you. It's about having the clarity, and yeah, I don't really have that anymore, which is fantastic. But yeah, definitely.
Cool. One thing I'm curious about, because I know, especially in my very early stages of wanting to have my own brand and start creating art, is like overcomplicating, you know? And I know both of you have very clean, like simple, beautiful pictures, you know, where it's not lots of shit everywhere and overcomplicated. You know, from my perspective, is when clients come to you and they're like, hey, like, I want to do this, but I want this, all these things in it. How do you rein them back to go, hey, maybe like this will work, you know, like to be able to simplify and capture the essence of what they're actually going for, but distracting with all these other added elements?
Oh, I guess I'll go. So I feel like that comes down to actually listening between the lines. So if sometimes maybe someone wants to overcomplicate it because they don't trust that their own energy transmission of them in themselves is enough. Other times they might have a very, very huge idea that actually doesn't need to be as complex as it is. And so I just have a conversation with the person and I'm like, hey, look, I know that you want that, but I actually believe what would be best suited for this experience would be A, B, and C. So it's just about actually trusting your own intuition as the vessel for this creation to happen, to actually bring like the conversation that needs to be had. So then they don't have to always be like mentally thinking about everything. They can actually feel into this conversation that we're having together and go, oh, actually, I think you're right. Okay, cool. Let's just go with that. So that's
totally. That's actually a great way of putting it. It's like a lot of the times people will come with like billion ideas because they, for a variety of reasons, and I always bring it back to like, just remember, this is not the only chance you have to express yourself. This is not the be all end all, one branding, you're never going to get photographs. Like some of these ideas need time. So I always like put that in. It's like, cool, let's bring it back to what Alira spoke about. It's like, let's bring it back to where you're right now. What's your intention? What's most alive? You know, what would yield the, you know, best kind of results based on your intention. And then from there, visually kind of pull things back and staying in your authority as a creator as well, like with firmness, but like openness to collaborate is usually what works best. And if they trust you, right? Like if they came to you and they truly want your magic, they'll, over the time of the conversation, you will know whether they're ready to, like, I don't know, surrender to the process a little bit and trust that the results will be amazing. Because oftentimes the people that I work with, they're not necessarily, visual is not their strongest form of communication. So they can't see the photo yet, right? Or like the outside results, like the visionary, again, it's like the visionary looks into the future and they're like, I can already tell where this is going to go. And there's a bit of trust exercise both for the creator and the person kind of coming in to trust that it will kind of happen, and whatever will be revealed will actually be the energy and the thing that you want. I am not very I personally like working with less. I'm not actually very good at styling as such. Like I actually think like Alira, that's your fucking jam. Like you're so good at,
I love it.
objects and bringing that kind of like voluptuous sort of style and aesthetics, but in a very minimal way. I like to work more with the emotion. So like the less I can have to bounce with, like I get trapped in sets, or, you know, like tried studio, it like just I'm like confused. My magic is like, you know, like out there communicating with the entity of the expression and the person's expression and whatever gets them to that expression, and that's the minimal thing that I need, and that's great. And then if someone wants like more of a beautiful sort of setup, then I'm like, cool, here's the person I know. Her name's Alira. Yeah, like you need to talk to her. Or even in terms of like really working with people's like their body expression. That's something that I've told Alira already in the past. It's like to create form, like really beautiful form with human body, and know kind of where you're getting to. It's an art form in itself. Like direct someone into that, or as close to that as possible. Like I'm more organically evoking things and then capturing them as they're happening. And even when I try to do the other, it just seems to naturally come back to this part of my expression. So it's trusting that too. So if someone was to come to me and say, hey, I've got this huge idea, I now am grounded enough in what I know that I do best, and I'm like, listen, I think you need a different photographer for this. Like it's just not the language that I feel super skilled in. Here's a list of people.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that. First thing I noticed with Alira when you came on, I was like, that picture behind you is like the texture that I imagine when I think of your photography.
She made it. Yeah.
Oh wow, yeah, it's got you in it for sure, and your photography. And yeah, I like that the defining, you know, like that you really like to do that, and the like to capture emotion rather than the actual visuals, especially in the complicating of creating so much to not be seen to who they are, and not having like I know that from when I first started, especially when I came to you, B, was just like I wanted to do everything at once, you know, like here's all the things, you know, we did like 3 archetypes in one day and we were both wrecked by the end of the day, you know. And I guess like when it comes to that, all the different styles that people have, especially in this era of social media, maybe not from a marketing point, but for two people that really understand aesthetics and have played with branding a lot, is like this thing of Instagram with its feed, and people creating mood boards and like weaving them together and telling a narrative of when you go to a timeline of like their feed. I want to know, both of you, what you believe the importance of that is. because I struggle with it. I can't. I'm like so inconsistent with mine. I'll like do a row of 3, and then I'm like, I just want to post something else now, you know. But I know when I go over to people's stuff, sometimes I look and I'm like, wow, you know, like my first impression is really like, oh shit, they've really curated this.
Mm.
Oh,
Curation is another form. Curation is another form of art. Like,
yeah.
yeah, this is something that I'm only learning as well. It's like, it's such a fine balancing act, and curators are actually probably another area of artists and expression that are misunderstood. Their value is not seen. To have your art curated, I think again, you're earlier like better. I can recognize that you're better at that than me because of the work that I've seen, but I'd love to hear your perspective on it. I'm like just gonna honor the fact that curation is a skill.
Yeah, I totally agree with the like curation. Holy moly, I've had such a journey with that. Honestly, it's really interesting to hear that as a reflection, because I don't believe that I'm any good at curation. I have been through so many different versions of how I want to present myself, and then I've just kind of gotten to a point where I was like, I don't care anymore. I don't want to curate. I'm just going to share if it feels good for me to share that image or whatever. But I definitely have such a deep appreciation as well for people who are really committed to the curation of their online presence. For me, I feel what is the most nourishing, what I would believe is the most nourishing for everybody, but I can only speak for myself, is to just go with the flow.
Yes.
And whatever feels good, just do that. Share that on your Instagram. If it's something random that doesn't make sense, cool. And I get the whole concept behind business and branding where you've got to stay on brand for people to get what you do. But for me, I do all of the things. I'm not just a photographer. I do many different aspects and of art creation and things that I'm interested in. So I don't want to limit myself, and I don't want to see anybody else limiting themselves. So yeah, one side of me is very deeply appreciative of curation and how much magic is involved in that. But at the same time, I don't want the constraint of having to follow the same color scheme and all that kind of thing for ages.
I'm really going to jump in here. I really want to jump back in here and say that's curation to me, like finding the lane. And, you know, I feel like for someone like you, from my perspective, my perception of you is that you're so good at curating that you don't even acknowledge that you're so good at curating.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I look at the way you curate your, you know, the way you even dress. So like curating your house, like I'm mostly moved these days. Like you post photos of your own self-portraiture. It's like, to me, that's like the essence of curation. Maybe not curation of your brand per se, curation of the expression, and the fact that even though you share so many different aspects of yourself, like I scroll through the feed and I'm like, this is all cohesive. That's even harder. That's even harder to me. I'm like, fuck yeah, that's amazing.
Spontaneous cohesion.
I didn't know I was doing that.
Yeah, I curate more emotionally. So like I look through my feed and you can tell that I'm feeling certain things in certain weeks. It's like my visuals, because not with photography. Like photography, I just tend to show people's expression, but you can still see what I kind of resonated with at the time. Like it will get dark and moody and really like wild, and then it will be soft and more heart, and you can see that. So even if visually per se they might not go together, emotionally they kind of, there's a story there. With my other account, it's like you can still tell it's like there's a frequency that comes out. It's like it's softer, it's more drawing people in, or this one's more like I'm shouting and I'm like standing up and like speaking fire through either visual or my words. And then it tends to fluctuate, but I do have, like, I like when people are anchoring at least a couple of things in. So like, you know, like you're going to go, my whole idea of my brand, that's not the photography. It's like, I have a spectrum of like full sun and dark moon. And that's what grounds me in. So then it's like, I have the freedom. There's actually a whole freaking expression in between, but it's like, I oscillate between like the darker kind of moodier visuals and the words that will go with that energy, and then like the full sun, let's celebrate your expression and like open up to like the radiance of it. And that anchors me in. So then I know like I can just say whatever I want and then balance them out if I feel like it. or go like full sun for for a long time, and then be like, hey, don't forget about this part of your expression, because it's in alignment with my values and, you know, like that emotional curation that I found for myself.
Yeah, like curation, and just like going further into this now is like something I'm quite fascinated with, especially as of lately. I've been thinking about the terminology and the existence of being iconic, and certain icons that I really love, you know, people that create projects and it is quite cohesive, and they have to refrain themselves for a while from really just expressing themselves and being in the moment publicly in a way, you know. So like people like David Bowie is a great example of that. Like he created a certain character for himself for a while, and he would really be it, and then he'd just kill that character and then be someone else. And there were like a whole project. It's like his stage design, his music, what he wore, the way that he spoke in interviews, blah. And like, then there's people like Kendrick Lamar, like when he creates a project and then he puts it out and he does these certain interviews and these certain live performances and blah, and then he'll do it and really deliver it, and it'll be a cultivated experience, put it out and then disappear again, and then like rebuild and like I find these things, and then it'll be a whole new flavor. Once again, Frank Ocean does it. This person does it. Like, I really love that way of being, but I'm just like B, you're saying, and both of you are saying, is just like there's such a thing about just expressing what's authentic and natural in the moment. But I want to find that like how to put them together, you know. And this is way off track to the original question, but I believe like that's why, like you're saying, you respect people that create and curate these like mood boards of an Instagram feed, because of, I believe it takes away the like instant satisfaction of a post that you put out in a moment, because it will get all the likes, you know. And sometimes when you're creating a mood board on Instagram, you might not get as many likes if it's to fit the bigger picture.
If you're creating an Instagram feed just for the sake of it looking nice, you're running a risk of it feeling empty. You're running a risk of it being actually suffocated, and like the expression and your natural curiosity and your life force that wants to be expressed. It's kind of like it's shallow. It's a shell. Like it's pretty, but I can't feel you. So I'd rather have someone who has like a messy Instagram, but I'm instantly moved and pulled. And then you can, from that, kind of bring a little bit of curation. But I kind of like, I don't know, I don't resonate with that. But I think it's a personality type as well, and the audience you're wanting to reach. So if you are bringing strategy, it's like, well, what are your people? Like my people are emotional people. So if I move them by emotion, it's like I'm speaking to my people. If I was more organized, I think I would be maybe more Virgos, you know, like people who actually like to respond to some kind of order. So
but what if it was a, like, for instance, like what if you had this curated experience where we created all those like in the moment pieces for it, but you just had to hold it back? Because like what if it wasn't a shallow, I just want this to look good, but if someone came over to your feed and was like, whoa, who is this person? The first impact is massive, and then when you go into it, each thing is like,
or it's like movies, right? Or like TV. But think about the process that people go into. Think about the amount of people that are involved. Think about the crew cast.
That's my dream. That's my dream.
But that's awesome. It's possible. It's absolutely possible.
I'm working towards it, but I don't know. That was just a bit of a tangent for myself.
I love it. Like taking social media, I like it because it's like taking social media to the next level of like not just being in the moment, kind of like
in the moment. That's
as you go. But it's an experience, but it just depends whether the platform can handle that, right? It's like testing whether the platform is appropriate for this. Because I don't know if you notice, or people who are going to be watching this, there's a completely different energy and frequency to Facebook than it is to Instagram, than it is to say, I don't know, it used to be Snapchat, Twitter, whatever. It's like I, as a both an artist and a, you know, person who works in like coaching and transformation, I feel my expression differently. Like I wouldn't go with the same kind of content to Instagram, because to me, in my experience, she's way more feminine. She's way more artistic. She's way more emotional. Whereas I see Facebook more like information.
Yeah.
So it's like putting out, consuming, whereas here it's like emotive, being moved, because the way it's even structured is so different, you know, like the amount of content, the fact that it's quite dark and you kind of can't read, you know. If you want to express yourself that way, you probably want to have a blog platform. You probably want to have, you know, and then like if you want a visual artist, like you probably want to have Vimeo and YouTube and all that sort of stuff, because you want to take people on an experiential visual journey. Like Instagram's probably not going to be that for you. So it's so
there's so many elements. There's so many
I
elements. I think what I like, the point that I was getting to with my tangented rant is like, I know from doing photo shoots in the moment, they're so amazing. And when I use that, like that momental, what's the word I'm looking for? Like whatever, I'm in the moment and I put it out and it's this incredible piece of art at that moment. And then a few months later, like you're saying, how you have to get photos more than just once a year, that it's sort of like, if we go into like tantric world, like I've just ejaculated, just used all my energy because it felt good at the time and it was amazing. But later on, I'm archiving it, you know, and I'm like, oh, that photo, you know, like archive, you know, what I said with it, not that important. But what if I curated something that was a bigger piece, you know, and it made the photos more timeless, that it was actually a bigger project. And that's what I'm curious about, is how to create that, is to be like, no, this photo is an iconic, timeless moment in my life, rather than something that'll get archived.
Then
in 3
you want
months.
to work with a visionary artist that understands your vision and understands how you want to create this, and you actually work with the longevity of the collaboration that I feel like Lira was speaking to. It's like, tell me where you're at, and if I'm the right kind of artist, we can go on the journey together. It's like that's what I would say, and then that's the value again of the artist, because they can lift your vision into the tangible aspects of that, right? And then you have maybe room for like music to come in and this and that, and it's like then your photographer wants to know that. Like if you were to have this and come to me and not tell me about it and we just did something, then I'd be pissed. Because I'm like, well, I don't, like, you need to tell me that it's a marathon. And then I can choose whether my expression and my art can support you in that, because it's there's a different energy and a different, you know, inspiration gathering, and like you're as an artist and go on a journey with that person too. Like if you're going to work on set with someone who has a video series, you're not just going to rock up on the day and be like, all right, what we're doing. You know, you gather your pieces, you think about, you know, how to make the styling really represent the essence and the energy and the storytelling. That's another fucking role that I respect so much, like people who work on set.
Yeah, I definitely want to add to that as well. Is like, I guess what I perceive is there's two options. You've got one where like you build your brand or your vision as an adaptable brand. So that's what it can be in itself. So anything that you do is going to be curated into the adaptable archetype where you're doing all of the things. And then the other side of it, which I've totally gone blank. I need to let it land again. No, I've lost it. So it must not be that important to speak about. But yeah, I definitely agree with what you were saying, B, in terms of, yeah, like understanding. Yeah, that's right. I just had to
We're back, baby.
It's like looking at yourself and being completely honest. Am I actually ready for this huge vision and all of the pieces that it's going to take to actually make it what I truly envision it to be? Because some people actually aren't quite at that place yet, and that's okay. Because then that opens an opportunity for the journey, right? I mean, it's all a journey, but, you know, some people are at the beginning of the journey. And so it's beautiful to have this big concept and whatever. But if you're just at the start of wanting to express that, maybe you need a little bit of like play and whatever. And then we can kind of go really deep into this big vision that you have. Because we all start somewhere. We all started crawling before we could walk, right?
Yeah.
It's the same. You've got to look at everything in that way.
Yeah, like thinking about someone like, you know, let's say Joe Dispenza wants to have a photo shoot and he wants to like embody all of his archetypes. It's kind of like, okay, maybe let's get you in your body in a different way first. Like let's have a fun play and see where your expression actually wants to go. Absolutely. Or like people who want to write a book, you know, maybe like the progression would be like, I don't think I have the strength and the capacity to write a whole like book, but I could start writing blogs.
Mhm.
I could start like, you know, expressing my artist's creator that way to build that resilience, because it's going to take a lot of energy. Like it actually is that longevity. Like I admire people, and that's also why you need a team when you have a longer process, because I believe you can't really hold it yourself. You need a support. You need to like delegate different parts, because that project demands it. It demands more team. It's like, you know, working in the fashion industry, kind of like part of me judging and criticizing it because there's a lot of money going into that, but also then understanding it's like there's so many pieces that creates this. You know, you have a set assistants, then you have a stylist, and you have stylist assistants, then you have the model, then you have person for hair, then you have a person that checks the lighting, then you have a person that actually manages the space, then you have all these other people, producing managers, and then you have the photographer. It's like,
Oh, sorry, B.
yeah, no, please. There's a good thread.
Yeah, I actually wanted to, I totally agree with what you're saying, because I mean, from my own experience, I had my first ever solo show in 2018. That took me 5 years to actually be prepared to do that. And since I've done that, I really realized how much goes into it. You know, I had so much help behind the scenes to make it work. I was also the pillar that was bringing it all together. But yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do it had I not had my friend Birute, for example, who was doing lots of the system stuff for me. I had no idea how to do spreadsheets and like how to organize all, you know, it's not my genius. And so having that aspect come in, and my big vision that I want to have my work in an archive, in a gallery where it far surpasses me when I'm gone. It's work that will be remembered for eons. You know, I want to have that, like a beautiful Renaissance painting. That's my vision. That's my desire. But also I have the stepping stones to get to that, right? I got to have more exhibitions. I've got to work with more teams of people to be able to curate that experience and have the work that feels really nourishing and fulfilling to share with people. So yeah, it's I think it's about humbleness as well, of being like, okay, I'm still the student and I'll always be the student, right?
Yeah. That's just like it's saying sustainability and like making something timeless like does take the time, you know, and the stepping stones. And yeah, that's a big, like, I think that even ties into the before talking about the I want everything in there, and being like, no, like this is your first photo shoot, you know.
But the one thing I do want to say to that is like to encourage people to not get like overwhelmed by the, you know, the vision. Is like just start where you're at and have that photo shoot, you know. Like if you're the person that is still hiding and like kind of creating all this stuff from other people's work and you haven't had that experience, have it, because you will learn more about yourself and your message from a portrait photo shoot. Even if you don't know what your brand is, that's the whole point. You're going to find out. It's like I've done a lot of initiation photo shoots with people where they've never had one, or they haven't really experienced themselves that way, and their brand exploded because they've just learned so much about themselves. And then they were like, I'm ready for another one. And then I see them go and have like an epic photo shoot with someone else because they're clear now, like clearer. It's an experiential thing for a reason. So don't hold back. If you're holding back because you don't have it perfect, or you don't know what your mission statement is, or blah, blah, throw it out of the window, especially if you're in an expression business, and it is about who you are and what you want to say. Even if you don't share those photos, just have the experience anyway. Because from even just having a chat, you know, like having a chat with Alira, if I was to do a photo shoot, I'm like, I would learn so much from just that process of inquiry and be like, cool, what do I want? What do I want to say? What would grow me? You know, what is my edge? Like, what do I not want to express? You know, can I express that? From that like kind of growth perspective. So yeah, just go and have it. There are, you know, we are in Melbourne, but there are photographers that you can tell them that that's what you want, and maybe they're actually secretly really good at it, but they're like thinking that they have to do mainstream shit.
so good. I was just about to be like, okay, I'm feeling to wrap it up. I'm going to ask you, what's your advice to someone that's listening that maybe well, is feeling ready, but also doesn't know how to really fully step into that part of them that is ready. So maybe I'll just also pass that to you, Alira, because B just picked it up.
Telepathy.
Yeah.
I think she eloquently shared it. And I also want to add that there's so many different ways on this journey. You could go and do a workshop on BDSM if you wanted to, or you could go and have counseling for years. There's so many different ways to go about self-inquiry, and a photo shoot is just more of a creative way to go about it. So why not give yourself the opportunity of that? If you've got a little bit of like dosh to spend and you desire to spend that, go for it. Yeah, that's all I want to say. It's like the opportunity is there and it's open.
And it's not as intimidating as people think. I just want to say that too. Like, photographers are not those crazy aliens that will expect things from you. It's actually all about that human to human connection, and it can be really beautiful and easeful and simple. It's actually not as complicated as a lot of people think. And most people are like, thank God I did it, like I'm so glad. It's like I popped the cherry and now I'm ready. And I want to do more because I see the value in it. So if that's you, like, just send that email to that photographer that you've been following for a while, like DM that artist that you want to collaborate with, and just start a conversation. Like, you don't know until you ask, you don't know until you start asking what's possible. And we want to see that, more of that.
Fuck yes. All right. Well, let's see hopefully after this, all the people popping up and doing the experiences. So thank you. Mwah, thank you. Mwah.
Thanks, Leslie. Thanks, Alira. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. It's so good.
So good.
More of this.
Yeah.
And
Curious. There. She followed him and soon found herself falling a very deep hole into a strange place called Curious.
Conversation.
Curious.
Conversation.
Nowadays, there are still girls and boys whose curiosity leads them to